one of the dear people in my life, whom I've only known for 1 year, but it feels like I've known her for a lifetime, is here. Amanda Pua Walsh. She is the CEO of Astrology Hub, and then about 10 more things that somehow she fits into her life. I met Amanda 1 year ago at an astrology conference in Las Vegas that was being done by David Palmer. Many of you may know him as the Leo King. And sometimes I just get green lights in my heart and I say, I know that this is somewhere I need to reach out or plug in. And those few people who come along who really touch my heart in that way. And I only had a chance to see Amanda from a distance, but everything in me was going, wah, wah, wah. And so I was like, okay, this is the final day of our conference, and I'm going to go and see if the synchronicities will work out for us to come together. So just as I was walking up to speak to her, someone else walked up to speak to her. And so I stood there for a minute. And when they got into an involved conversation, I thought, okay, just relax and trust. If it's meant to be, it'll be. But I don't want to sit over here and pull on trying to interrupt what was already happening. Amanda doesn't even know any of this took place, probably. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to go to lunch. We were on our lunch break. Well, I went down and got my lunch, and I thought, you know what? I never do this. I'm going to go and sit by the pool and eat my lunch. Well, as I'm walking to the door to exit to the pool, who's standing right there? Beautiful Amanda was right there. And the synchronicity was much better than if we had met for 2 seconds and then needed to separate to go to lunch. And so we went outside, and I am telling you, it was one of those confirmations that was, oh my God, me too, me too, me too. So aligned. I actually say that these few people that I find come out of the same pea pod. That's exactly how it feels with Amanda. And she pointed out when we turned on our cameras today that she even decorated with sunflowers in the background, just like the painting I have in my background. Neither of us knew that was going to be the case. I'm telling you, this is how it always goes with Amanda. And so welcome, Amanda. I am so happy to have you here and to be able to share you with more people through my audience.
Oh, Ron, it is such a pleasure. Thank you so much for that very, very sweet introduction. And I am so honored to be here. So thank you for having me.
You are welcome. Amanda has a beautiful heart and shares herself so generously in a lot of capacities. And one of those is she is a constant interviewer on Astrology Hub, doing tons of events. And so I love turning the tables on you today and getting the chance to get to know you more fully, because you do it so beautifully as you share lots of other people and bring astrologers in that particular venue from all different approaches to life and bring them, and somehow you inspire their hearts, the best of each one of them, because I happen to know some of those astrologers a bit. And when people are with you, your beautiful heart inspires that. So I so look forward to getting to know more of your heart rather than you getting them to share about themselves.
Thanks, Ron. That's really sweet. Yeah, I always, when I'm interviewing, I always feel like I get to like open this door or this window into someone's heart and soul. And it's like I open the door and then we go in, and it's just so amazing to discover other people and what they're all about and what they're passionate about. So I love playing that role, and it's exciting to play this role too, especially with you,
Ron. Thank you. I have to say, in my first career performing, I loved people, but I had no idea what a huge, rich, profound tapestry every single person is. Their stories and their challenges and their gifts. I really had no idea. But now that I've been doing this self-empowerment work for 22 years full-time, I do the very thing that you said. I have the privilege of sharing heart to heart and getting to know the depths of people. And quite honestly, I think most people don't really trust that anybody's interested in the depths of who they are. And so
Oh, yeah.
that people don't tend to have any venue that they share themselves.
It's so true. It's so true. And it's one of the things I love about Astrology Hub is giving these astrologers a platform, because once they have a space, it's like the floodgates open and you get exposed to so much amazingness, and I totally agree with you. I was actually thinking about that today, about how there's this rich, deep well of experience and emotions and thoughts and inside of all of us, and we block it, and we like you said, we don't think anybody cares, or there's an outlet for it, or that it's right or okay or good, and so we don't share it. But what I've found is the more comfortable I get sharing myself, and I see this with other people too, really authentically, vulnerably, and truthfully, that it unlocks the door for others to do the same, and people can connect like in a real way when we do that. They can feel like they're seen and understood when you can come from that place. So it's a journey though. Like when you were talking about your last career and how you didn't realize there was so much depth to all the different people, I feel like it kind of goes in lockstep with the depth that we're discovering in ourselves. So like the deeper we go in within ourselves, the deeper we can go with other people. And it's just kind of this, ever unfolding, ever deepening experience between our own self-exploration and then our ability to receive others in that way.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, by the way. Shocking for you and me. One of the things that eventually we'll talk about today in this conversation is facing the challenges of our lives and how those actually guide us to the deeper resolutions and claiming of self and more meaningful approaches to life when we face those challenges. And just as a closure on this that we're talking about, one of my particular challenges growing up was having an absent father. And this very thing of actually going to him when I was in my 20s, and I said, I don't know anything about you. I would love to know about you. He did not stop talking for almost 3 hours.
Whoa.
It's the first conversation we'd ever really had. So on this same, it can even be in our homes that we're not sharing each other. And
Absolutely.
So I love that when you and I came together on our very first day, we couldn't shut up. And we actually went back to our conference about an hour late.
Yes, we did. Well, I remember, so I at the time, I had never told, and people say, what do you do? And what are you about? Or, whatever, when you meet new people. And I remember you asking me, I can't remember exactly the question, but it was like, you didn't say like, what are you here for? But it was kind of like, what do you feel like your purpose is for being here? And it was the first time I had ever said to any human being, I'd only had this thought inside of me, that I felt like I was here to be and spread love. And that was it, and you would, oh my gosh, me too. It's like, wow. I mean, I thought that you're like basically a stranger I'd known for about 5 minutes. And I thought you would probably think I was pretty strange, in saying that that's what or full of myself or something. But you just said, me too. And that's when I knew that it's okay to say things like that, and even if you had received, I was prepared for you to receive that oddly. And I was okay with that. But when there was that opening, I bet a lot of people feel that way, deep down, that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Sometimes just the willingness to be that authentic only plants a seed for somebody, and they're not having a moment of finding someone else from their pea pod. But how great that you did, because it shortcutted us to such a immediate depth of conversation. And every time we're together, I love it. So I thank you for being here again. And I think where I want to start, even though I want to go through a bunch of your life, I'd like to start introducing you and Astrology Hub and what that is and the great opportunity that you are creating. In my opinion, in an unprecedented way.
Thanks, Ron. Yeah. So I was about 5 years ago, going through a really, really, really challenging time in my life. And I'm sure we'll get to that later. Astrology was not something I was very familiar with, but during that time, I had my first reading. And I remember just sitting in, her name's Natasha Alter. She's an evolutionary astrologer. She's on the Big Island. We are still dear friends to this day. And I remember sitting in her kitchen, essentially with our tea, just astounded at how this perfect stranger knew so much about my soul, about my life, about the deepest like thoughts that I ever had that I never shared with anyone, just from looking at my birth chart. It's like, whoa, this is amazing. And so I had that reading, and then I went through the really hard time in my life, and astrology was like this lifeline for me. It was like a tether almost, as I was like flailing around in the ocean, I had this tether that was astrology, because what it did was it helped me keep that perspective of why what was happening, that there was a bigger purpose it was serving, both for me and my life and for others, and the path that I'm on. And so it helped me through the darkest period of my life. And once I was close to being on the other side of that, I had an opportunity where I was going to be able to share it with other people. And so when that opportunity came, it was like, yes, I'm in. I want to, if I can somehow bring this wisdom and knowledge and understanding to other people in a new way, because what I had noticed is that there was like really academic astrology that's like learning Japanese, and like I literally could not understand any of it. Or there was kind of like the back of vogue horoscope astrology. But in between, this kind of astrology I was experiencing, that was a deep soul orienting astrology, I just didn't see it very much. So it was like, oh my gosh, yes, I want to bring this to the world in a way that honors astrology, in a way that honors the astrologers, and in a way that honors the audience, and really gives them an opportunity to understand and align with who they are, like at the deepest levels, why they came here, what are we doing here? What's the whole point? And then, align with that within, but then also align with that universally. So there is there's a rhythm, there's an authenticity, there's a pulse of the universe. And so what I have found in my own life is that the closer I get to that pulse, and the more I align my life, the better things go. And the more purpose I feel, the more passion I feel, the more alignment I feel, the less struggle and fight against and salmon swimming upstream my whole life is. So it's giving this gift, both the gift for me, the gift of astrology is knowing thyself, knowing yourself, and then knowing your place in the bigger whole. And so that's, I feel so passionate about the ability to bring this to people.
Yes, I think that we are all so much more connected to life than any people have been taught. I was on the back of the magazine reading the horoscopes for years, on and off, just occasionally. And this is not what you're referring to. For somebody who has dedicated a chunk of their life to learning how to read the impact of the planets, just in what we'll call the natal chart, where the planets happen to be right when you're born. I too was amazed when I had my first reading that someone could look at this and recognize the influences. Let's just say that identify your gifts and your challenges. And they're like, oh my God, this is like a destiny. It's like a stamp on self. And back to sharing self that we talked about first, I think the way we become love and that we learn to love and we share love, the very thing that we talked about in our first meeting, is by getting to know self. And the fact that that self is imprinted in the heavens is humbling, but it's also inspiring as can be. That we're not just this little speck who goes through life not even thinking that anybody cares to hear my story or what I'm going through. We're connected on a profound level. And I love that you have brought this into so many people's lives. One of my favorite things about the way you do it is that you bring together tons of different astrologers, because in my readings, let's just say with between 5 and 10 people over the years, just because I love to experience people's gifts, not one of them approaches it exactly the same way.
Right.
They see it through the filter of who they are. And therefore, what's going to touch one person is not going to be the same as what's going to touch another person. And you bring a whole bunch of astrologers together with a much greater chance of inspiring people's lives and showing them how connected and sacred their lives are. I know it gets very easily a little bit woo-woo or sounding special and ungrounded, but these are very grounded realities.
Yeah. And
that you do that, please.
That's been a priority for me. So for anyone who does know about astrology, I am a Capricorn sun. And so for me, if it's not practical and useful and grounded on this planet, I'm not that interested. You know, I understand that there is a place for theory and philosophy and all that, and that's great. And for me, I want to take that theory and that philosophy and ground it into our lives so that it actually becomes useful, and that we are walking with it on a daily basis, and it's informing the way that we live. And if it's not doing that, I'm just not that interested. I know some people really like to just go deep and deep into the theory, and that's great. There's a place for that too. And I'm grateful for the people that do that. But that is a huge priority and focus. Is so, like, you know, when we do a full moon article and we're talking about the energy of the full moon, I'm always wondering, okay, great. Here's the energy of the full moon. It's all about the shadow, for example. How do we actually take that information from the universe that, like, this full moon, the energy is about diving into the shadow, and then apply it to our lives and actually start to look into the shadow, and what practices can we bring to that? And you know, what questions could we journal with? What conversations could we have with people that might be uncomfortable, but that need to happen? You know, and so again, to me, I always think of it as the curriculum of the cosmos, that the cosmos has this perfectly designed curriculum that's literally like step by step by step by step. Here's what to focus on. Here's what to let go of right now. Here's what to really bring out in yourself right now at this period of time. And it's always changing, and it's always highlighting different aspects of our lives. And when we align with that, it's magical. It's magical, the spiritual journey. Because I remember before, for me, my spiritual path, it was kind of haphazard. Like, I'd read this book and try this, and then I'd, you know, hear this speaker or go to this workshop and try this on. But the curriculum of the cosmos helps us to really order our steps and our actions and our focus so that we're aligned with the energy of the universe. It's and I know that sounds, I remember if I had heard that like 7 years ago, I would have thought that I'm a crazy person, but I can only say these things having experienced it, and then also watching thousands of other people do the same thing and see the impact that it has in their lives. So it doesn't feel woo-woo to me anymore, but I can see how it might land that way for someone who hasn't experienced it yet.
Of course. And the great news is that even if something does go outside of the scope of what someone has explored, just the passion that you share it with, just the grounded presence, just the heart presence that you convey it with, or that someone would convey to another person, has just as much impact as the words. And so, yay, we stretch each other into new territory, but when we do it with the heart, is when it makes the difference. And that's why not just getting caught up in the theory or the philosophy of something, which might put you in your head.
Right.
But instead, how do I bring whatever I'm exploring into my body to make it real so that it can have an impact? So, you know, any subject, you know, if I'm studying nutrition, well, it's not going to do me a whole lot of good if I got 37 books on the shelf and I've read a bunch, and I know unless I actually take the time to eat certain things and pay attention to my body and see how it impacts my body. And it's the same way with information. Instead of food, we take in And then we have to have a way to energetically move it into the body. And I love that the work I do is so aligned with your approach, because I wouldn't even be willing to do this work if it weren't experiential and practical. So many people come to me and go, oh my God, I've been to a lot of therapists, but I didn't really know what we were building or what we were doing or why. I knew it felt nice to talk about it, but what's the resolution? And when you learn how to nurture it inside and move the energy and make it exactly the things you're talking about, where the cosmic curriculum can bring your focus to specific things, just like when I go to first grade, I study certain things. And when I get to fifth grade, I study other things. It's a cycle.
Yes.
I call this the soul curriculum. So it's not surprising that once again, we're aligned and all of these things get set up through our gifts and challenges. So yes. I love once again that you're doing at Astrology Hub. And I hope that anyone who's listening now that is not familiar with your work and may even be a little skeptical about astrology, that's totally cool. Amanda is totally fine with that. I've heard you address it many times.
You know, and almost every astrologer that I've interviewed, when I ask them how they got into astrology, maybe not almost every, but at least 50 to 60% say that they were cynics, that they went into the study of astrology to prove that it's not right, that it's not legitimate, that it doesn't have any basis in reality. And here they are 30 years later practicing astrology. So you see how that little experiment worked out. But I was amazed when I heard that over and over. You know, people would talk about it, and some of them said that they were angry. Like they went into it just like, I'm going to prove that this thing does not work. There's no merit. Very academic people, these astrologers that I work with, you know, in the intellectual, academic, like professor type individuals who, you know, went into it to prove it wrong and then came out of it and are like, whoa, okay, there's something to this. And I'm going to study deeper and find out what the threads are and understand it.
Yeah. So to bring us back to where you started this whole share, that yours came out of a time of challenge in your life, I want to back up much further in your life and just say, I would love to hear about somebody or maybe even two people in your life, whatever feels right to you, who impacted you, who did show an interest, who inspired you to trust taking steps or to get to know yourself, something like that. I'd love to hear about your history.
Okay. Well, you know, my mother is an amazing woman. There's four of us, and she's another Capricorn, except for that her Capricorn is in the fourth house. So she kind of brings like the organization and structure that I would bring to my business, she brought to the home. And so, you know, she loved being a mother, and she's still alive. She's an incredible woman. Her father was a psychologist, and one of the biggest things that she wanted to instill in each of her four children was a sense of self-confidence, a sense of value as an individual. And I have to say that foundation she gave me has just kind of influenced everything, that I, you know, inherently know that I have value. I inherently know that I have something to give. Even if there's been times in my life where I forget, it's always been there deep down. So I really think that foundation that she gave me, she also, you know, I'm a mom. I have two daughters, 9 and 6. One of the things she also did was ensure that she didn't parent each of us exactly the same, that she honored that each of us were different people that might have different needs. And that's very astrologically aligned. I mean, because everyone has a different chart, right? So she didn't do the ones, I mean, we all had like similar rules and things, but in terms of how she approached each one of us, she really saw each one of us as individuals. So now as a mother, I do my best to do that with my two girls who are very different from each other, and just really, you know, see the soul and the essence of them, not as like, oh, they're my two daughters and I'm their mom, but like, no, these are two souls who chose me and I get to steward them in this life. But my purpose here is really just to hold space for them to become who they are. So my mother, there's been so many people. It's a really hard question, Ron, but I'd say that when I started my spiritual Wow, this is really hard. There was a woman named Natalia Rose who is a nutritionist, and I read her book right after I had my first daughter, and I had like 50 or 60 pounds on my body that I could not get off no matter what I did. And I wasn't even happy with my body before I had my daughter. So now I had like an additional 50 pounds, and it was like, oh my gosh. And everything I did to lose the weight did not work. And there was a nutritionist that I was going to, and I was a good little student, and I would get my little nutrition plans and I would do them to a T, and nothing was working. This one nutritionist said, well, maybe you're not setting your intentions correctly. Maybe you need to set your intentions differently. And I remember seriously wanting to punch this woman out, because it was like, wait, are you serious? Like God or the universe or whatever isn't clear that I'm really like desperate and really want to be in a healthy body, like, and maybe I need to just tweak my words a little bit. I was so annoyed by that suggestion. However, she recommended me a movie, and the movie was about manifesting. And in the movie, the woman said something about the more life force energy you have, the more you can bring into your life what you want. And I remember hearing this and going, whoa, I don't know what this life force energy thing is, but I think I want it. And so I Googled life force energy, and the first thing that came up was a book by Natalia Rose that was called Raw Food Life Force Energy. I was like, whoa, okay, here's like the diet and this life force energy thing like in one. So I ordered the book, it came to me, and I devoured it in 24 hours, implemented the whole diet, and literally the weight melted off so easily. But what that was a diet that was helping me align with nature, just like astrology, but align more with natural foods, whole foods, and organic foods. And I wasn't into this yet, so this was new for me at the time. But Natalia, I remember reading the book and I thought, wow, I'm going to be friends with this woman someday. And I was living in New York City at the time, and she was in New York City as well. Eventually I reached out to her because I had my daughter, and the diet that she was suggesting for me was very different than the diet that the doctors were suggesting for my daughter. So she had me get off dairy. She had me, like she was talking about baby formula as like toxic and not ideal for children. And so I reached out to her and said, as a parent, this is very hard, because you have the whole medical industry telling you one thing to do for your children. And yet what you're saying and what actually has worked for me is very different. And so maybe we can work together and create a resource for parents to have the support they need to make this kind of transition with their children. I remember just calling her and leaving a voice message and being like, oh my gosh, is this woman actually going to call me back? I'm just a person who's read her book. She did, and said that my message was music to her ears, and she's always been wanting to do this. And so we ended up starting to work together. And that relationship was a massive catalyst for me. I ended up moving from New York to Hawaii, because this idea of aligning more with nature with my food, it was like I was Alice in Wonderland and I had fallen down into the hole, and it was like, how deep am I going to go? It's like, okay, well, if I align with my food and my body feels so much better, and my heart, I'm starting to feel my heart for the first time ever. I had never actually felt my heart. And all of a sudden, just by changing my diet, I was like, whoa, I have like feelings and passion and ideas that I've never experienced before. And this only happened from changing my diet. So what would happen if I changed like my lifestyle, moved from Manhattan and went to somewhere where I could be in nature and my daughter could be in nature. So yeah, that was a really pivotal relationship that opened up a lot of new doors for me.
Yeah, I love that I ended up using nutrition as an example earlier. I had no idea you were headed there. And it is amazing how, just like the imprint in the heavens when you're born is a curriculum, as you put it, you find the points in your life, at least this is what I think, you find the points in your life when the focus, as you put it, it's time to focus on this. And so you reach a challenge which brings your focus to that. So in this case, part of that challenge was your body and the weight and how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it brings the focus to that challenge, and then you either ignore it and miss the opportunity of what is, I consider, universal support, because when we think of challenge, we don't think of support, but I believe that it is. But when you respond, all those synchronicities, even with the person who showed you, that's a little irritating, but she still was the synchronicity that led you to the person you get to.
Yes.
We all play such a beautiful part in just like the person who came up and talked to you in the room in Las Vegas, blocked, but opened up a much bigger opportunity. I love how our lives align like this. And it's so great that you listened. And that is inspiration in telling the story for a lot of people out there, because we live in a really challenging time. And oh my goodness, if there's not a day that we don't get hit out of left field with some new thing that we need to evaluate and decide how we feel about it, and decide what we're going to stand for, what we're going to support, decide who we want to be. And you decided, I need to make these shifts, and you became proactive, and that response turned it into magic. And now, for those of you who may not have known, Amanda lives in paradise on the island of Maui. And so tell us some of the experiences of being in nature and how that has impacted your soul and your experience.
Wow. I mean, it's endless. Just this morning, I do a beach walk in the morning, as many mornings as possible, and I dance hula. And so there's this platform. It's not a real, it's a natural platform. It's just this very flat, sandy area that I go and I dance, I practice. And so it's just me and the ocean. And never, last week there was a tourist family that walked by, and they were getting a free hula show, which was really sweet and cute. But normally it's just me and the ocean, and I can't even express the way that it feeds my soul on such a deep level. And to see my children experience that as well. They climb trees, and they run around barefoot. And these are things that, kids just a few generations ago always did. But in today's world, it's becoming more rare. And so I just, I'm looking right out at the mountains, and I stopped my car yesterday to take a picture of a rainbow, and, but I don't want to make it sound like it's problem free. One of the first things that I noticed when I moved from New York to Hawaii was that saying, everywhere you go, there you are, is so true. There are just as many people miserable in quote unquote paradise as there are anywhere else in the world. Mm-hmm. And so it's not, to me, I'm careful to make it sound like the geography has been the big impetus. Yes, it is inspired, and yes, it was what called, but there's been so much that I've needed to let go of to even get to a place where I can receive it and enjoy it and appreciate it. So that's been quite a journey.
Yeah, I think what you said is so important. I like to say we all have a wound, and we all have potential greatness. And resolving the wounds and the challenges are how we move into more of our greatness. But the tool of nature and being somewhere that aligns or inspires peace does not mean you don't have challenges. I love that. Mm-hmm. It's vital. We're going to face ourselves with that soul curriculum or cosmic curriculum, no matter what. But to listen to the things that touch you, whether it happens to be the nature of Hawaii or being in the mountains where I happen to be at the moment here in Woodstock, New York, whatever it is, nature is just one example. But I encourage anyone listening to go, what things do I enjoy? How can I set myself up and put myself so that I am supported with the things I enjoy while I work through my challenges and learn how to integrate my greatness?
Totally. I mean, I think of it in terms of like sensory input. Like, what kind of sensory input are you surrounded by? And even if it's just making your home a space that feels more like a sanctuary for you, more nourishing for you. Or even, I recently have gotten into essential oils. And so I love like diffusing the oils, and it just makes me feel really good. And so it's the sensory input. I think, so many of us are bombarded with sensory input that we don't choose, with like the big screens everywhere, and then, media input all the time. So when we do have the opportunity to choose our sensory input, I think it's really important to choose the things that feed our soul.
Yeah, I think that it's developing as a theme in our talk today that we have so much more opportunity if we pay attention to what we put in our bodies, whether it's food, whether it's our surroundings, whether it's what we focus on, what we read, how much of the media that we decide serves us. It's so important that we pay attention and that we make the choices that set us up well. And yeah, I just think that I'm tying it all the way back to the beginning. If I don't even trust that I matter, because we didn't have a mother like you happen to have who recognized individuality and championed that. That is a very rare thing, quite honestly, having worked with thousands of people around the world. So even if we didn't get that we can learn that we do matter simply by deciding, I matter. Simply deciding, wait a minute, I'm the only one in here. What I do impacts me. So let me just start with me and how I treat myself. Mm. I'm only at episode number 6 of this podcast, but I've already talked about how do I treat myself and set myself up well in one of the other interviews, or not even interview, one of the other episodes where I'm just sharing. And so I love that this ties together and that you are somewhere in nature that feeds your soul so that your well is full or more full, so that you have all of that heart inspiration to share through Astrology Hub and in your family and at the corner market and wherever we go. When we make these choices that are wise, everybody wins. Everybody wins.
Well, and the interesting thing is that I don't know if everyone experiences this, but when I was making those choices, to leave my successful career in New York and start all over in Hawaii with no real plan, and, just the whole way that unfolded, there were so many people who thought that I was kind of losing it. I was going a little crazy and making choices that might not be so wise. And so I think that so many times when we do listen to that call inside of us, that it's met with resistance. And what I've noticed is that the resistance that gets reflected back to us externally is truly just the internal dialogue that's sort of opposing each other. There was a part of me that thought I was crazy, that thought I wasn't making a wise decision. So that would be reflected in what I would hear from other people. And then the more and more that I got peaceful and comfortable with the choice, the less I heard that. The more I heard, whoa, that was really brave. That was a big, bold move that so many of us want to do, but you did it. So it's interesting how whatever conflict we're experiencing inside will be experienced as external reflection from other people.
Yeah, I like to pass on to my clients that when they're in conflict with other people who disagree, and I say, well, people, including me, including you, can only pass on or communicate whatever we've learned to assimilate and feel safe with. So someone saying to you, oh my God, have you lost your mind? Why would you do this? Simply is telling you who they are and saying, my comfort zone is challenged by your choice.
Right.
So if it's something that touches you and moves you and you did follow through, then just living into the truth of the benefits and sharing those can also help stretch other people's comfort zones, that more is possible for them too, even if it's not Hawaii.
Very true. Yep. Well, and the other thing that happened shortly, well, about 2 years after moving, was that it became very clear that I was going to need to let go of a lot of the aspects of myself that I had come to identify with very deeply, including my marriage and my financial stability, and, you know, these aspects of myself that I had always prided myself on. And so there was a period where I was like, gosh, maybe they were right. You know, maybe I didn't make the right decision. Maybe this was not wise. But always somewhere in me, I knew that, and again, the astrology was helping to confirm this at the time, that no, I'm exactly where I need to be. My soul chose this entire configuration that's happening, and I will come out a totally different person on some levels, more empowered and more aligned with my truth and more capable to serve. So I think that, again, you know, it's not like this linear process. And I remember going through it and thinking, God, I want to help people who are making that leap in their life and who are really, you know, making bold choices and doing what feels like is in their heart, but maybe expecting for things to just like work out right away. And like all of a sudden, because it's like that Joseph Campbell quote, follow your bliss and doors will open where there were none before, or the saying, leap and the net will appear. I remember hearing things like that and thinking that it was like, you know, like I was going to leap and there was going to be a net, you know, but what I realized is that I was going to have to fall through some branches first. And then there was going to be a net eventually, but there were things again that I needed to let go of. So I always thought, gosh, I really hope that at some point I can reach people who are at that point where it's like, God, can I go back? Like, did I make a mistake? Is this going to actually work out? Is there ever an end to this feeling that I'm just having to let go, and things don't feel like they're really working out? And I remember just thinking, and I still feel this way today, that I'd love to be able to offer a hand to those people and say, so if this is one of you out there, that there is an end and that this is all part of the process. And it's not this like, you know, so many times in the spiritual world, I feel like this word bliss and ecstasy, and, you know, it's like, you know, it takes a while to get to the bliss and the ecstasy. And even then,
like magical thinking. Yeah,
totally. Well, and I think it's a lot of times people later in their life who might forget about the period that is the dark night of the soul, you know, that real having to let the ego aspects of ourselves die. Not that it ever goes away, but, you know, the things that we've identified with our whole lives, and realizing that we are going to identify with something new about ourselves, something even bigger, something even more truthful, something more fulfilling. But that period of letting go of the old one has to happen.
Yeah. I think that if we keep in mind the wounded or challenged parts of self, and the greatness and the truth that's using your greatness to say, everything in your truth is, I need to go and be in nature more fully. The path that I'm choosing is not serving me any longer. And that gives us an opportunity to face certain challenges.
Yeah.
It interrupts the familiar. And so this is a vital part of the curriculum, is to learn how to nurture and resolve those. So when we're moving towards something, what better time to say, I'm willing to face the challenge to still get to the experience that really matters to me. And you get there with more resolved pieces, more integrated pieces than you would have if the net had just said, ta-da, here's the answer. You don't need to face yourself. Well, how am I going to grow? How am I going to deepen and become more of my potential? So I love all this. This is so helpful for a lot of people to hear this, because we have been passed on a lot of fairy tales, and then the prince is just going to come out and kiss Snow White and all of it will go away. And I think we do a major disservice.
We do.
By presenting that there's a journey in between. It's still completely possible for the prince and the connection and the whatever, to stay with that metaphor, but there's a journey. It's what happens. So that, yeah, you get the point. I don't.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, and I think too, you know, a lot of times we see this vision for our life and for who we're moving into. And it's like, again, it's that thing where like that vision of who you are exists in a dimension of reality. And the process to get there is a process of matching the vibration of that vision. And so again, it's such a letting go process, a shedding process of the denser energy that we've taken on, that we've, you know, become through the years, and aligning with that vision. I know that it's a unfolding process that continues. But yeah, that's why I'm always really careful, Ron, when I talk about my story, to make sure that people know, like, it wasn't like, oh, I'm feeling this call, and oh, then I moved to Hawaii and everything just works out. Now I have this thriving business, and don't you want to do something similar? I feel like that's the way the stories are presented a lot of the time.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, you know, I want people to know, like, actually, it's been really hard. Actually, I've questioned myself many times. Actually, I've gone through, like, not the dark night of the soul, the dark several years of the soul.
Yes.
And, you know, it's all been totally worth it. And it's not the easiest path. You know, it's like, they talk about the road less traveled. Well, think about the road less traveled. Like, it's not as smooth. There aren't clear signs. There's no lamps lighting, you know, there's no street lights lighting it up. You feel blind a lot of the time. But yes, there are great, amazing rewards to taking those kinds of risks and going on that journey. And maybe not the kind of rewards that we think, you know? So my New York businesswoman self would have heard that and thought, oh, well, then eventually someday I'll be financially rewarded. You know, I'll be a really good girl and I'll follow my heart, and then it'll work out fine, you know, and that will be the return. And I'm not saying that it can't be, and I'm not saying that it won't be, but what I'm saying is that what's happened on the path for me is that what I value has shifted so dramatically. Like the things that I value the most in the world are no longer the huge paycheck that I used to have. Although, like, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's an either or. I'm just saying that what I value more is the ability to dance hula every morning, you know, with the ocean. I value that. I wouldn't give that up for anything at this point. So it's, you know, but it's, again, one of those things that I used to hear people say stuff like that, and it would make me nervous, because then it was like, well, wait, does that mean I'm going to have to be poor? Does that mean I'm going to have to be broke? And it's like, no, none of that. You know, it's just, there is a journey though. And we have to be willing to do what it takes to become ourselves, and to love ourselves, and to be able to serve, and to feel fulfilled, and to feel on purpose. Yeah. Does that make sense, Ron?
Makes total sense. And any subject can become very complex very quickly.
Yeah.
We're talking to a lot of people in a lot of different situations.
Yeah.
But I like to say that there are many different kinds of abundance. And yay for money. It makes some things possible.
Yeah.
But it is not on any level the answer that fulfills and makes everybody feel safe. Nothing has that power except building a connection to self, understanding how to value, how to flow with life in a different way. But to come back to the abundance, there's opportunity abundance, there's friendship abundance, there's doing the things I love abundance, there's spending my time the way that I really want to as an individual abundance. We get so caught up in being a #1 New York Times bestseller and blah, 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 whatever. And that's wonderful too. Yay. Yeah. But guess what? It's just an experience. And that doesn't mean that everybody who has money or has a bestseller is happy and fulfilled. So how do we learn how to pay attention to self so that what we put into ourselves and where we invest our energies gives us such an abundant experience of life. And you happen to be doing it this way right now. And you had done it other ways when you were in New York City making $500,000 a year. I happen to know some of this story. And yay, that you're being true to what is most authentic for you right now. And it may shift 10 more times or 50 more times, but you get the point. And that you're being true to it allows you to move through claiming more pieces of the cosmic curriculum and to make your own intimacy with each of those parts of your life. It's a beautiful thing. So yes, it made great sense, would be the short answer.
Okay. I never want to give the impression either that it's like you have to choose between, financial abundance and happiness. It's like, that's not the answer either. So yeah, thank you for all of that clarification.
And generally, there's so many directions my head wants to go. Generally, if I want to create financial abundance, it's going to take X amount of energy and X amount of focus and whatever. Yeah. That is not necessarily success and fulfillment to a lot of people. Let's just say somebody in the severe archetype is working 80 plus hours a week and doing so many things, and they're bringing in a ton of money. Well, that might be exactly what their soul needs to focus on. Yay. But it's not what would touch somebody else who would much rather have a simpler life with time to be in nature and with friends. So many people just like a balance of all those pieces. So to be true to yourself is what you're doing. And that's the greatest inspiration out of what we're sharing today, I think.
Yeah, well, and it's true, Ron, because I was working 80 hours a week and making a lot of money. And there was a time in my life where that actually felt exactly what I wanted to be doing. It wasn't until I had my daughter where my priorities started shifting and I started questioning the whole setup I had created, but it really worked for me. And I'm really glad I had that experience too. So yeah, it's true. There is no one answer. There's no one size fits all spiritual approach. It's really, and then that's again why I come back to astrology. Why I love it so much is because it is so not a one size fits all approach. It actually proves through the variety of all of our different charts that it could not be a one size fits all. We are all so different and so unique and so beautiful, in our unique expression. And it's not like what worked for me, it couldn't possibly be exactly what is for someone else, because I'm a different person and they're a different person. And so the soul experiences that we want to accumulate are different. But, there are principles, I think, that can be universal. But in terms of like proving how unique we all are, when we talk about that first reading, this for me, my first reading was the first proof that felt really tangible to me that there is a God or a higher intelligence, because it was like, okay, if there's this much complexity in just my little being and this much intelligence and this much like purpose in my little being, imagine that like everyone has that. This is so beyond my comprehension that something could have designed something so incredible that I was like, wow, I mean, I can't explain that. I can't explain that at all. And I had 13 years of Catholic school to, contemplate God a lot. But for me, this was just like, wow, everything I had hoped to understand through, I have a master's in psychology, everything I hoped to understand through my psychology studies, through all my religious questioning and all the paths and different ways that I went, a lot of it is answered in astrology, which is shocking to me. I mean, shocking. If you told me 7 years ago that I would be saying that, I wouldn't believe you, but I do now.
Yes. I love how all of the pieces of your life have brought you synchronicities and opportunities to explore so many facets that allow you to claim and develop and invest in pieces and parts of you. And it brings us back to literally where we started this conversation, which is you and me. We are what matter. And I say this to people all the time when they're caught up in situations that are challenging. And I said, we're going to work through that. Let's just say we're doing a couples session. And I say, we're going to come to those challenges. But the goal here is not to resolve that challenge and think that's the end result. The end that I believe we're going to is where any two people go, you and me, we are the most important thing in this conversation. And when we can value each other and invest and inspire each other and allow each other to be the profound individuals that we are, so many of the situations end up taking care of themselves. And so you and I could talk for hours and hours and hours, and I want to do this again. I know that I can't keep you hostage as much as I would like to. So let's bring this down to you telling people a little bit about the opportunities that they could plug into at Astrology Hub if they're wanting to find out a little bit about their soul imprint in the cosmos and how it might give them some beautiful clues for making their lives more meaningful.
Okay, awesome. Well, one of the things I wanted to do was offer your audience a gift, and this gift is our Full Moon Essentials Guide. So let me back up a sec. I'm in New York City, and we've decided we're going to move, and I keep hearing about the divine feminine or like the sacred feminine and the goddess. And at the time I was like, I don't know what any of that means, but it sounds really interesting. And I want to like dive in and figure out what that is. So when I moved to Hawaii, I started getting invited to women's circles, and these women's circles would meet on the new moon. They'd meet on the full moon, and we would, again, this was all like so like exotic and mysterious to me. And I loved it. And most of the time I would be the youngest woman in there with, you know, these beautiful, wise, amazing beings. And we would talk about the energy of the new moon or the full moon based on the sign it was in astrologically. Again, foreign language to me at the time. But when it was an Aries full moon, we would acknowledge what the Aries energy is and what the energy of that cycle would be, and we would walk with it. And then we'd come back next time and we'd talk about our experience of the Aries. Did I say new moon or full moon? I can't remember.
You said full.
Full moon. So we would talk about our experience of the Aries full moon. So this helped me really begin to, instead of just like memorizing the archetypes in astrology, you know, all the signs and what they mean, I was actually having an experience of them in alignment with the rhythm of nature. You know, so it was time to look at Capricorn. What does it look like, feel like? How do I experience it? How do I have an experience of this energy? So that is one of the things I'm very keen to offer people who are hanging out with us at Astrology Hub. And we have a ton of free resources that you can tap into. We put out a new moon and a full moon article that will explain to you all the energies of that moon cycle. And then you can do the same thing I was doing. What I started to do too was journal. Be like, okay, it's a Libra new moon. Let's see how this feels. This is what the astrologers are saying this energy is about. How am I experiencing it? What's happening in my life that confirms or denies that? So we offer the new moon and full moon articles, but for your audience today, I'd love to offer the Full Moon Essentials Guide. And what that is a guide that goes through ideas for you to align with the full moon energy in general. So what things to do. A lot of people experience a lot of challenges around the full moon. If you think about, 70% of our body is water, and the moon pulls on water. Like the moon actually has the ability to change the tides. So we are affected by that pull of the moon. And so a lot of people experience a lot of overwhelming emotions and, things around the full moon. So you'll get some keys as to how to work with that full moon energy healthfully. And then also it goes through all the different signs. So full moon in Aries, full moon in, Aquarius. It helps you understand the energy of that overall. and then gives you journal prompts to work with so that you can actually start to understand the curriculum of the cosmos for yourself. So that is available to everybody. We have Astrology Hub TV is a live show that I do every Thursday at 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern. And in that show, I interview different astrologers and we go through different relevant aspects of astrology and how to apply it to parenting, how to apply it to your relationships, how to apply it to choosing the right career for yourself, how to apply it to choosing when to invest in a home, really practical things, or where to live on the planet. So we go through really, again, tangible, practical ways to use astrology. That's free and available every Thursday. So you could go to our Astrology Hub Facebook page, like the page, and then sign up for live alerts. And when you sign up for live alerts, you'll always get an alert whenever we're live with that show. So yeah, there's tons available. If you would like to be a part of the community, I welcome you with open arms, and thank you for your interest in going deeper with how the cosmos is really here to support us. It's really here to support the continual unfolding of us, the continual unfolding of our highest expression. And I've also come to realize that we're literally in co-creation with the planetary energies. And so we can work with them almost as allies. If we bring consciousness to that relationship, we have these allies in the sky that many of you probably don't realize. But when you think about the fact that Gaia, or this earth, is alive, I think a lot of people recognize that, yeah, the earth is alive. I can actually feel that. I know that. So why wouldn't Saturn be alive? Why wouldn't Jupiter be alive? Why wouldn't Mars be alive? If Earth is alive, why wouldn't the rest of them be alive? They are the sentient beings. So we can actually co-create with them and actually ask them for support and guidance. And it's pretty amazing and magical what that, and it brings such a richness to our life experience. So you're invited. So come download the free gift. You can go to the Astrology Hub Facebook page and go to our website, sign up for any of the gifts that we have, and start working with it if you aren't already.
Yeah, so thank you. That is a very generous offer. And let me just say that I got involved with Astrology Hub in the last year since meeting Amanda, and I have been so moved and enhanced by all that you have offered through this vehicle that I strongly encourage people to get involved. There are so many options out there now. And so if you're someone who wants a place where it's clear, where there's a lot of heart and a lot of consistent places to plug in, please take advantage of this gift. And I will make sure that in the show notes below this episode, you'll be able to get that. And so I thank you for your time and your love and your commitment to making a difference in the world and becoming and expressing love. It is such a beautiful enhancement in my life and to a lot of people who know you. And so I adore this time together, and I will definitely be asking you to come back and explore some other things. And I still have about 5,000 questions about your life that I want to know more of too.
Oh, Ron, thank you so much. You also are such a gift, and the work that you're doing is so impactful. I knew when I met you that it was like, wow, I want to highlight you and your work because of all the impact that you're having on people as well. So thank you for your dedication and commitment to that. And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody tuning in for caring and for receiving what we had to share today.
Yes. So lots of love to you and to everybody listening. And I will see you next time. Mwah. Bye. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Before we close, I wanted to encourage a couple of things. Number one is to go to ronbaker.net. There you will find lots of clues for how you can deepen this conversation. You can also find a way to get the booklet, An Essential Guide to the 9 Nurturing Needs. This is going to be a core focus of how we're going to enhance the quality of your life from the inside out. In all the episodes, So I encourage you to go there to get an overview of those 9 nurturing experiences that we all seek more than any other thing in our lives. I also want you to get involved in the conversation here. I really would like to talk about the things that are important to you, the things that you're concerned about or excited about. We live in a wacky world that is changing constantly. We need to learn to connect to ourselves, to count on ourselves, and to count on one another. So please either get involved at ronbaker.net or in the Facebook page, which is Empowered at Last with Ron Baker. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to deepening this conversation about life. And I close as always, choose well, live fully, and by all means, be good to you. Have a great week.